Anyway, Rabia calls Asia up. It's been a year since she wrote the letters, but she agrees to meet.
And she told me that day after school, I went to the public library, and Adnan was sitting at a computer checking email or something, and I sat down next to him. We started chatting. And Adnan was a very popular boy in school. He's handsome and, popular with the ladies. So she was speaking to him, and her boyfriend shows up a little bit later with a friend. And she said her boyfriend was really angry at her because he's like, why are you talking to him? As high school kids, why are you talking to him? Is he hitting on you? And she remembered very specifically that day she went to her boyfriend's house with him. And they got snowed in. And that snowed really heavily that night. And she remembered that for the following 2 days, school was closed. So she had very specific details about why she remembered that day.
Asia wrote out an affidavit on the spot. In it, she says she and Adnan spoke for about 15 to 20 minutes while she was waiting for her boyfriend to give her a ride. Quote, we left around 2:40, unquote. Remember, Hay is supposed to be dead by 2:36. And then the kicker. No attorney has ever contacted me about January 13th, 1999, and the above information. So, benefit of the doubt for a second. Maybe Adnan never actually showed the letters to Cristina Gutierrez, his attorney. Sure, he said he did, but who knows? Well, I know. Deep inside Gutierrez's notes on the case, I have boxes and boxes of such stuff, there's this in her handwriting. Asia plus boyfriend saw him in library 2:15 to 3:15. Then there's another note, dated July 13th. It's more than 4 months after Adnan's arrest. This is written by one of Gutierrez's law clerks who visited Adnan in jail. Quote, Asia McClain saw him in the library at 3. Asia boyfriend saw him too. Library may have cameras. Why, oh why, was this person never heard from at trial? A solid, non-crazy, detail-oriented alibi witness in a case that so sorely needed alibi witnesses. I can't ask Cristina Gutierrez because she died in 2004. So I put that question to a few defense attorneys, and they said, well, alibi witnesses can be tricky, especially if it's just one person, because then it becomes one person's word over another. A single witness like that can backfire under cross-examination, or they might take the jury's focus away from the weaknesses in the state's case. So there are conceivable strategic reasons why Cristina Gutierrez might not have wanted to put Asia McClain on the stand. But what is inconceivable, they all said, is to not ever contact Asia McClain, to never make the call, never check it out, never find out if her story helps or hurts your case. That makes no sense whatsoever. That is not a strategy. That is a screw-up. When I first heard about the long-lost Asia letters and the lawyer's mistake, I thought, well, their fight is over, right? They've got an alibi witness who was never heard from. It's such a slam dunk. They're done. Adnan's family hired a new attorney who filed a petition in court based on the Asia affidavit. His argument was that Adnan's trial could have turned out differently if Gutierrez had checked out Asia's story, and so Adnan should get some form of what's called post-conviction relief. The new lawyer figures he'll get Asia to come to the hearing. She'll vouch for her story. By this time, Asia had finished school and moved away. He finds an address on the West Coast, tries calling, sending messages, nothing. Finally, he writes a letter to her and gives it to a private investigator who goes out to Asia's house in hopes of delivering it. Asia's fiancé comes to the door, opens it part way, tells the investigator that she cannot speak to Asia, but that from what he knows of Adnan's case, Adnan is guilty and deserved the punishment he got. Later, the investigator gets a call from the fiancé. We don't have to talk to you, leave us alone. So Adnan's lawyer calls off the search for Asia, figuring once a witness turns on you like that, it's too risky to keep pushing. And then, at Adnan's hearing on the new petition, it comes out that Asia had done the very thing they dreaded. Asia had called one of the prosecutors in Adnan's case, a guy named Kevin Urich, and undermined her own statement. This is from a recording of the hearing. Mr. Urich is testifying on the witness stand.
Mr. Urich, how did you learn that the defendant had filed this petition?
A young lady named Asia called me.
And what did she say?
She was concerned because she was being asked questions about an affidavit she'd written back at the time of the trial. She told me that she'd only written it because she was getting pressure from the family, and she basically wrote it to please them and get them off her back.
I don't know what happened to her and why she would do this.
Here's Rabia again. She says it's not true that Asia was bullied into writing that statement 15 years ago. And she can't fathom why Asia would discredit her own statement like that.
I don't know why. The affidavit was written voluntarily. I mean, I'm an attorney. I'm a licensed attorney. I work on Homeland Security. It's like I have no reason to make something like this up. You know, I didn't even know she existed until after the conviction.
So what do you think happened? Why would they have this sort of violent reaction to helping out Adnan now?
I don't know. It was just really odd.
So who knows what would have happened if Asia had shown up? Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. After all, they had the original letters and the affidavit. That's all that should have mattered. But it didn't look good. It'd be natural for the judge to wonder, why can't the defense produce this Asia person? Why is she making this call to a prosecutor? I mean, anyone would wonder. I wondered. I wondered if maybe she was pressured into writing that affidavit. And I wondered if she was hiding something. Like maybe she'd lied in those 1999 letters. Maybe she didn't really see Adnan at the library that day, and I just wanted to insert herself into something exciting. And maybe now that she was grown up, she wanted nothing to do with any of it. So 3-4 months after I'd first sat down with Rabia, I'd become fixated on finding Asia. I'm like a bloodhound on this thing, because the whole case seemed to me to be teetering on her memories of that afternoon. I have to know if Adnan really was in the library at 2:36 p.m., because if he was, well, library equals innocent. It's so maddeningly simple, and maybe I can crack it if I can just talk to Asia. I write her a long, gentle, pleading letter and send it off to an address I find online. I'm calling people who know her or who I think might know her. I'm checking the same loop of Facebook, My Life, LinkedIn sites over and over, trawling for clues about where she might be or how she might think. If you're wondering why I went so nuts on this story versus some other murder case, the best I can explain is this is the one that came to me. It wasn't halfway across the world or even next door. It came right to my lap. And if I could help get to the bottom of it, shouldn't I try? I start running down all the other information in Asia's 1999 letters. She mentioned there were security cameras inside the library. So my producer and I went to see the very nice manager there, Michelle Hamil. Was there a security system back in ¡99 that could have been checked at the time?
Probably. Yes. I'm going to say yes.
Okay. And what system was it?
I have no idea. It was a old system.
Yeah.
So,
But you think probably video?
it was video.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that was part of setup. Every morning you put a videotape in. So
Okay.
that's,
And were you guys recycling the videotapes?
yes.
Okay.
I think it ran for, a week. So you had a Monday tape, a Tuesday tape, a Wednesday tape, and so forth.
So even if on the very day that Asia had written her first letter, Adnan's lawyer had run out to find the security tape, it probably would have been non-existent by then.
Wouldn't have asked me.
But what about the computer Adnan was supposedly using to check his email? To use the computer, did people have to sign in, like write their name down?
They did.
And what was the system then?
Piece of paper and pencil.
And those, by any chance, weren't logged meticulously and kept for 15 years, were they?
No.
Bummer. All right. We got nothing. Then there was the mystery of Asia's boyfriend, Derek, and his friend, Gerard. All winter and spring, every time I went to Baltimore, I went to Derek's mom's house looking for him, and to Gerard's window tinting business. And then finally... All right, so you are Gerard Johnson.
Yes, I am.
You don't know how excited we are to be talking to you. I've been looking for you for like 4 months. You didn't do anything, but we were hoping maybe you remembered this moment. On January 13th, 1999, do you have any memory, by any miracle, that you went to Woodlawn Public Library branch near Woodlawn High School to pick up Asia McClain with your friend Derek?
I have no idea. Asia McClain. Is that a person or a book?
It's a person.
No recollection of it.
Scratch Gerard. Derek was my last hope. Eventually, I caught him at home. Considering I woke him up, he was exceedingly courteous. He showed me a photo of Asia and him all dressed up. They dated most of senior year. What's up here?
This is our senior prom. Yeah.
You guys both look really beautiful.
Yeah. That's my, that's Asia. Yeah.
But Derek couldn't remember that day either. Shocking, I know. He used to pick Asia up from school almost every day back then, either from the library or from the front of the school. And he says he spoke to a lot of her friends, just to be polite.
And it's very possible that I could have spoken to the gentleman and her on that day, but it's very hard to remember, 15 years later. But it sounds, very it sounds like this definitely could have happened. Yeah, I don't think Asia's not the type of person that would lie.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, she's definitely not that type of person, to get involved with a lie. That she's not that type of person. Yeah. So she, it seemed pretty credible to me.
One day, I get a call on my cell phone from a blocked number.
I mean, I have a couple minutes if you want to chat about it.
You guessed it, Asia.
Coming up, what Asia remembers, which is a lot. That's in a minute. From Chicago Public Radio, when our program continues. It's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Today on our program, Sarah Koenig looks into the murder of a Baltimore teenager back in 1999. Our story continues. You remember where we left off. Sarah had been looking for Asia McClain. Here's Sarah.
I wish I could say that my charming, persuasive letter is what prompted Asia to call, but the truth is she never got my letter. I had the wrong address. But she was calling because I'd followed up weeks later with a one-line email, and she was responding to that, a little confused.
This is crazy. I mean, I have a couple minutes if you want to chat about it.
I recorded our conversation on the cell, which is why the sound quality is so bad. Sorry about that. Asia is now a 33-year-old stay-at-home mother, and she has not spent the last 15 years worrying about Adnan and whether he's guilty.
I trust the court systems to do their due diligence. And I was never questioned. I was never informed of anything pertaining to the case. I don't know why he was convicted.
Asia said she was spooked when the private investigator came to her house. I don't know if that's why she didn't testify at the hearing or why she made the call to the prosecutor, but she told me that when she got the knock at the door, quote, that was not cool. Because to her, if Adnan did do it, quote, the last thing you want is a murderer being pissed off at you, knowing where you live. But she had a remarkably clear memory of what happened on January 13th, 1999. She had an internship at the time, and so she got out of school much earlier than everyone else. Derek was supposed to come get her at the library along with Gerard, but they were very late. She remembers seeing Adnan come in after Woodlawn let out for the day.
Adnan came in, he sat at the table, and, we weren't, really close friends or anything like that, but, we knew each other, and, he chatted or whatever, and I can't remember. I think I must have asked him how he was doing or whatever, and he said fine, and, he told me that him and I broke up, and I was like, oh, well, that's a bummer, and I was like, what happened? And he was like, oh, well, she is seeing this other guy, some white dude, and, but he was pretty chill about it. He was just like, well, if, she doesn't want to be with me, then that's fine. I just wish the best for her, and that kind of attitude. And
I'm not sure why Asia's memory of this interaction is so clear all these years later. My best guess is that because she wrote it down at the time, in those letters and then the affidavit, that the details somehow stuck. Do you remember what time you were talking this would have happened in the library? Do you remember what time that conversation would have happened?
I don't, because I know school let out around 2:15, so it was probably around 2:30.
Because you had said you got out of school earlier than other people. So were you there? Were you at the library before 2:15?
Oh, yeah. I had been at the library for a few hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was pretty pissed when Derek showed up. And he asked me who Adnan was, and, jealous teenager boy language. He's like, who the hell is that? Mm-hmm. And I said, don't even start with me, because you're a few hours late. Don't worry about who that is, I remember that day because that was the day that it snowed.
Were there snow days after that? Do you remember?
I want to say there was, because I think that was like the first snow of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have even remembered if it hadn't have been for the snow and the whole, I just remember being so pissed about Derek being late and then getting snowed in at his house, and it was the first snow of that year.
The snow is important. Hay disappeared on a Wednesday. That night there was a huge ice storm, which is unusual in Maryland. It ended up being a state emergency, and school was closed for the rest of the week. Asia started asking me questions about the case. Wasn't there DNA evidence? And what exactly was Jay's part in the whole thing? She wasn't sure Adnan was guilty. She said things I've now heard from so many people since. He seemed like he cared about Hay. He didn't seem angry or upset. I thought there was more proof.
Even that day, it did, I didn't walk away thinking like, oh, I just started something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to base his innocence off of his composure at that moment, I would say he's innocent, but, I mean, I'm 32 years old now, and I know that, there's people out there capable of heinous acts that can keep a calm demeanor,
Yeah.
And I know that there are people who flip out on a moment's notice and do something that, they regret for the rest of their lives. So I don't really...
Yeah.
Even now, it would be nice if there was some technicality, something that would prove his innocence. Great, one less evil person I've met in my life,
But I think Asia, like, you might be that technicality. Do you see what I mean? Like, if you're saying you saw him on this day at that time, that means the state's timeline for their whole theory of the case doesn't make any sense.
It's a possibility.
Because they're saying he was in the car with her at the very time that you're saying, no, I saw him at the library and we were talking. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's exactly the window where they're saying she was murdered. In case you couldn't hear that, it was a sigh. And I completely understand that sigh. It's how I feel a lot of the time. Because I talk to Adnan regularly, and he just doesn't seem like a murderer. A few minutes after I hung up with Asia, Adnan called on schedule.
Hey, Sarah. How you doing?
I'm good. I was just talking to Asia McClain.
Okay.
You don't sound very excited.
I had I really,
This was not the reaction I expected. I felt like I'd just interviewed an ivory-billed woodpecker. But when I told Adnan what Asia remembered, instead of being excited, Adnan said it was heartbreaking.
I mean, on a personal level, I'm happy because, in a sense, it's, that I'm not making this up. And at least, if nothing else, it kind of like, at least someone other than Rabia knows that, this did take place. Anything that can kind of support what I'm saying to be the truth, that I didn't do this, is great. But from a legal perspective, it's like, I wish she would have came to this realization maybe like a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like, it's too late. I'm sorry. I mean, I definitely appreciate it, and I definitely kind of hear the elation in your voice, and now I feel like I punctured your balloon.
No. I mean, I see what you're saying. I hadn't thought about it in that way. When I told Rabia I'd talked to Asia, she immediately burst into tears. Because they were all correct. It was too late. The judge ruled on Adnan's petition a few weeks before I spoke to Asia. Denied. The judge wrote in his opinion that Cristina Gutierrez's decision not to use Asia McClain as an alibi witness was strategic. After all, Asia's original letters didn't specify an exact time, and Gutierrez could have reasonably concluded that Asia was offering to lie in order to help Adnan. And finally, he wrote, Asia's letter contradicted Adnan's own alibi. Asia says she saw him at the public library, but Adnan said he was on the school campus the whole afternoon. Maybe the judge didn't understand that Woodlawn Library is basically part of the campus. But anyway. Asia's story, then, is legally worthless. A witness who says she saw you at the exact moment when the state contends you were strangling a young woman in a car is worthless. A few days after I spoke to Asia, she wrote me an email. I've been thinking a lot about Adnan, she wrote. All this time I thought the courts proved it was Adnan that killed her. I thought he was where he deserved to be. Now I'm not so sure. Hay was our friend too, and it sucks feeling like you don't know who really killed your friend. Hay was the sweetest person ever. If he didn't kill Hay, we owe it to him to try to make that clear. And if he did kill her, then we need to put this to rest. I just hope that Adnan isn't some sick bastard just trying to manipulate his way out of jail. I wrote back, believe me, I'm on exactly the same page.
Sarah Koenig. She's the host of our new podcast, Serial. You just heard the first episode of that podcast. Every episode after this is going to bring you like the next chapter in her search for the truth about the murder of Hae Min Lee. And you don't have to wait to hear the next installment. You can listen to